I'm going to need to start this video by telling you all something very important about this particular game. This is a recommendation video for Transformers Fall of Cybertron. However, it's very unlikely that you'll actually be able to pick up a copy of this game. The thing is though, I've been playing this game again recently, and with new games being a little bit thin on the ground at the moment, I just wanted to share my experiences with you. So yeah, as far as recommendations go, I don't know how much merit this video is going to have. That said, I do love this game, I think it's great, and I'm absolutely still going to recommend it to you. Okay, so let's quickly go over why you probably won't be able to actually play this game. The original version of Transformers Fall of Cybertron was released in 2012, which I cannot believe was a decade ago. The game was available on PS3, PC and Xbox 360, which is where I played it back in the day. Then, around 4 years later in 2016, it was ported to the PS4 and the Xbox One. The issue was that the port didn't get a physical copy for the newer consoles, so basically it was only available as a digital download on the PS4 and the Xbox One. Not only that, but they charged £40 for it in the UK and about $50 for it in the US. It's one of the only games that I've ever purchased digitally at that kind of price point. In fact, off the top of my head, I literally can't think of any other game that I've downloaded for anywhere near that price. But yeah, I bought this specific game in 2016 via download, and I'm genuinely glad I did at this point. So why is that? Well, as of the recording of this video, Fall of Cybertron is completely delisted from all storefronts, so you can't actually buy it via download even if you wanted to. Plus, as I said earlier, there's no disc for it, so if you want to buy this game on PS4 or PS5 for example, you simply can't. If you have a PS3 or an Xbox 360, then yeah, the physical discs are pretty common, but for any modern system there are zero options. Now, if you own the game digitally like I do, you can re-download it whenever you want to, at least for the time being, but who really knows how long that'll last. Sadly, this isn't the only Transformers game to get delisted either. Transformers Devastation is also gone, but luckily there's a PS4 and Xbox One disc for that, so it's not as much of an issue. And so there you go, I do apologise, but I had to get that out there and let you know what was going on. It's a weird way to start a video like this, but let's move on and talk about the actual game now. Transformers Fall of Cybertron is a linear, story-based third-person shooter that features multiple playable characters, vehicle combat, and various upgradable weapons. If you're already a fan of Transformers in general, especially of Generation 1, I'd imagine that you've probably already played this. However, if not, this game is basically a retelling of the beginning of the first Transformers generation. The game that came before this was called War for Cybertron, and as the name suggests, focuses on the war itself. Fall of Cybertron, again as the name suggests, focuses on the fall of the planet and the Autobots attempting to escape the planet via the Ark. That Ark eventually ends up on Earth, just as it did in the original 1984 cartoon. Some details are changed here and there, but it's the same overall narrative. You play as multiple Autobots and Decepticons throughout the entire campaign, and I have to say I absolutely love the robot designs. At this point in the story, the Transformers don't have Earth forms, so the way that they look is very Cybertronian, but they still resemble their G1 Earth forms, which I did appreciate. I mean, I'll just say this now, but I generally like everything Transformers related, and yes, that does mean the Michael Bay movies too. I actually haven't said this on the channel for a while, but those 5 movies from Michael Bay are some of my all-time favorites. I've seen them all at least 20 times each. I've only seen the Bumblebee movie once though, because I thought it was easily the weakest of all of the films, except for maybe the first 15 minutes of it. The only thing I'm really not a fan of is the 2D animated shows and anything to do with Beast Wars or Beast Machines. I think the stories in those shows are really good, but I just don't like Transformers having animal alt modes. I don't know why, I just don't really like it. It doesn't work for me. Apparently the next live-action movie is going to involve some Beast Wars stuff or something similar, so I'm not too sure how I feel about that yet, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Gameplay-wise, it's mostly a standard third-person shooter. The big difference here is that in most levels you can transform back and forth as much as you want to suit the combat situation. The game is split into chapters and you take control of a few different Autobots such as Optimus Prime, Bumblebee and Jazz, but some chapters require you to play as the Decepticons as well. This means you get to play as Megatron, Starscream, Soundwave and the Combaticons who combine to form Bruticus. The characters are broken up into 4 classes, which are Scout, Scientist, Destroyer, and Titan, which play slightly differently depending on who you're using. Scouts like Bumblebee move more quickly and have a cloaking ability, while Destroyers like Megatron move more slowly and have much better firepower. In all honesty, there's only one chapter in the entire game that I don't like very much, and that's because it's a forced stealth mission where you play as Cliff Jumper. You have to use your cloaking ability to sneak up on enemies and take them out Assassin's Creed style. I've played this section so many times at this point that it's not too much of an issue to just get through it for me, but for a new player it's probably going to be a little bit of a low point for the game. That said, story-wise, it makes total sense and, Cliff Jumper and Jazz are the right characters for a mission like this. I just wish maybe we could have got a different type of mission, a more action-orientated one, and maybe heard about this mission through a cutscene or something instead of actually having to play it. It is what it is though, and it's definitely not the end of the world. Over the course of the game, you'll be collecting blueprints for weapons which you can then purchase and upgrade at the Teletran 1 terminals seen throughout the campaign. The upgrades that you unlock here are permanent across all playthroughs, so if you just want to beat the game on easy to enjoy the story, you can then move up to normal or hard mode with all of the unlocks that you obtain through the easy mode. The weapons all feel really punchy with good sound effects, and they're basically all viable in one way or another. You can only hold 2 weapons at a time, one standard and one heavy, so I personally go for the Neutron Assault Rifle and the Scrapmaker. They are probably the most basic weapons you can get, but I think they're very reliable and enjoyable to use. There isn't a proper cover system in the game, unless you count just standing behind a wall, but you can swap which hand your weapon is in to get a better angle on your opponent's location. As I mentioned earlier, you can also transform back and forth freely between robot and vehicle modes depending on the situation you find yourself in. There are a few strict story sections where you need to stay in vehicle mode to outrun something or transformation is blocked, but generally you can do it whenever you want to. When you're in vehicle mode, you generally have access to stronger weapons like homing rockets or chain guns, but driving or flying around and trying to hit the enemies can be a little bit more difficult. Having said that, the designers of the game knew exactly what they were doing and decided to make the default vehicle movement act a little bit like the robot mode, in the sense that you can move forwards, backwards, and strafe from side to side. The only time a car acts like a car or a jet acts like a jet is if you hold down the left trigger for a speed boost. You'll even see that the wheels make contact with the ground when you do this, but when you're not boosting, your vehicle is just kind of hovering slightly off the ground. It's a very nice touch, and it just makes the vehicle combat feel much more enjoyable and, more importantly, much more playable. I'd guess that if they hadn't have implemented this small gameplay detail, the driving and flying would probably be absolutely worthless and just frustrating to do, so good on them for caring about it. Lastly, let's talk about the multiplayer. Now, this both brings a smile to my face and pains me greatly. This game had what was, for me, one of the best PvP multiplayer experiences that I've ever taken part in. That is a strong claim, and while it might not be, factually correct, it is true for me personally. I don't think I've ever enjoyed a multiplayer game as much as I enjoyed this one. I did really like Gears of War 3, but I still think this beats it. It had a really, really cool character creator where you could basically design your own transformer within the 4 classes. I favoured the Scientist class, which could fly and heal allies with a healing beam. It was just so cool to, jump off a ledge, transform in midair, come back around, start shooting at the enemies on the ground, flying around. It was just, it was just really cool and fun to do. I played as all the classes, of course, but I absolutely favoured the Flyers. Each class could be leveled up and you could unlock new weapons for them and abilities, and I actually prestiged the game because I played it so often. If you're not familiar with that term, it's when you earn enough XP to hit the max level in multiplayer and then you reset your level to 0 to go again. You usually get some kind of icon next to your name to show off your achievement in-game. There was also a wave-based horde mode called Escalation, which I did complete a few times. It was pretty decent, especially with a group of friends. It's a nice addition to have, but I definitely played the standard multiplayer much more. I'm also going to link the official multiplayer trailer in the description if anyone wants some visual context. And along those same lines, you may be wondering why I haven't shown you any of the gameplay of the multiplayer or the character creation from these modes. Well, that's because the servers were shut down in 2020 and online play is no longer possible in any mode. This means that you can't even access the character creator, which is such a sad thing for me. I hadn't even considered the servers being shut off or anything like that until I booted up the game recently. This is probably going to sound, well, I don't know, maybe a little bit melodramatic or something, but this really hit me like a brick to the face. I had all these great memories of just playing that multiplayer mode, and then all of a sudden the realization that it's just gone. You know, it's difficult to accept, but hey, the idea behind this video was to show you guys a game that I love, and who knows, maybe you own a PS3 or a 360 and you never got to play this game before. Now would be a great time to give it a try. Or maybe, just maybe, some way, somehow, this game will end up getting a remaster or even a sequel. It may be created by a different studio, and I know it's incredibly unlikely at this point, but if it ever does happen, we'll have this recommendation to look back on as a bit of a time capsule. In my opinion, Transformers Fall of Cybertron is not only one of the best Transformers video games ever made, but it was also a brilliant third-person shooter that looked great at the time and included a strong multiplayer offering. On the other hand, I do understand that if you have zero interest in the Transformers IP, then this probably won't stick with you the same way that it stuck with me. That said though, I still think it's a solid game with good gameplay, and it could still be enjoyed by anyone who likes third-person shooters. Ultimately, if you collect retro games and you own a PS3 or a 360, I would absolutely recommend picking this game up just for the campaign. If you've only got modern systems and you aren't interested in going backwards or picking up an old console, then I'm afraid your options are non-existent. At the end of the day though, I don't know if this game will ever see the light of day again or in what form. I also doubt that we'll ever get a sequel. However, if we do, I can guarantee that it's going to be a day one purchase for me. If you enjoy the video, I really hope you'll consider subscribing, and if you like what I do and want to help support the channel, please check out the first link in the video description down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.